Hi guys, ready for chapter 3. So far we know that Mary was the cook in the Warren household, and 5 members of the family, I guess you could say 5 members of the household, ended up becoming sick. The mom, a brother, 2 daughters, and the first daughter, Mrs. Warren, I think the older sister, 2 of the servants, and the gardener. Those are the people who ended up getting sick. We still don't know if Ms. Mary, is to blame or not. At the end of the last chapter, they decided to move back to town, basically. They were kind of staying in like a beach house for the summer, and summer was getting closer to an end and people were getting sick, so they were like, well, just go home, it'll be okay. Mary does not go with them. But then it kind of left a little teaser there at the end of the last chapter where it said many of the households that she worked in ended up becoming sick. But as of right now, we only know about the Warrens. So is there really more to the story in regards to Mary as the main person? Could she actually be a villain? Is she really to blame for all of this sickness? And is it intentional? Things like that. Those are questions that we don't really have answers to yet. And so it helps us to know, how sickness travels and how it passes person to person. But remember, this is 1906, in the early 1900s, 1906 to like 1908, 09, something like that. We're still in 1906, so they don't have a cure yet. They don't have any of those advances in medicine that we see today, right? Chapter 3 is not very long, but chapter 4 is kind of long, so I'm probably only going to do chapter 3 right now, and then I'll call it a night. Okay, so chapter 3, in which the usual suspects are questioned. For the rest of September, the elegant Oyster Bay house stood empty, its curtains drawn, its doors locked. With the gardener sick, the grass grew high, the hedges went untrimmed, the flower gardens untended. At the end of the month, the house owners, Mr. and Mrs. George Thompson, returned to Oyster Bay. The house was one of the 3 properties they owned. They often rented it out for summer months while they vacationed at their cottage in the Catskill Mountains. It was clear that the Thompsons had missed the article in the New York Times, for the news about the Warren family had made the front page on September 11th, 1906. 5 ill in one household, said the title. So when summer ended, the Thompsons had expected to find the Warrens gone. They didn't expect to find their house the center of a typhoid fever epidemic, and their trusted gardener stricken with the disease. Thank goodness the gardener was pulling through and expected to make a full recovery. The Thompsons were shocked. Typhoid was not a common disease in wealthy Oyster Bay. It was associated with filth and with people who had careless toilet and hygiene habits. These things didn't describe the Warrens, who surely had clean habits. But the New York Times article didn't blame the Warrens or their servants. The article blamed the house, saying it is supposed the water supply was bad. That alarmed the Thompsons. As landlords, the Thompsons knew that the stigma of typhoid fever would make it difficult, if not impossible, to rent the house again. Worse yet, if the house was sick, if it had an underlying problem that couldn't be resolved, it might be condemned or even burned down. It was a rare and drastic measure, but sometimes deemed necessary in order to remedy the problem and protect the public's health. Right away, Mr. Thompson contacted the local health department, whose officials were just as concerned. By 1900, I'm struggling. By 1900, scientists, medical doctors, and health officials had accepted the germ theory of disease. This theory proved that microscopic organisms, invisible to the naked eye, germs, caused diseases. The most common cause of typhoid was water contaminated with the deadly Salmonella typhi. These bacteria could live for weeks in water or dried sewage. When a typhoid victim used the toilet, the infected urine and stool were passed into outdoor privies or flushed into a cesspool. If precautions weren't taken, if a privy wasn't cleaned out, if the cesspool wasn't drained properly, if human waste wasn't disposed of properly, the bacteria would leak into the water supply. From there, the bacterium could easily make its way into a human body. Just one sip of tainted water or one bite of tainted fruit or vegetable was all it took for the bacterium to find its way into the intestines and make someone sick. My cat's trying to open the door. Knowing this, the health department officials got busy trying to determine how the Salmonella typhi had infiltrated the Warren household. Was it possible that sewage from the stable or cesspools or outdoor privy had leaked into the well, contaminating the water supply? They'd poured fluorescein into the second-floor toilet that the Warren family used, and then they turned on the water faucets in the bathroom and the kitchen below. If water from the faucets turned orange-red, they would know that the toilet plumbing leaked, contaminating the rest of the water in the house. The water ran clear. The inspectors pulled on tall rubber boots and gloves. They slopped around both cesspools and the stable, collecting samples. They lowered an instrument into the outdoor privy used by the servants and collected a sample there. They collected more samples from the well, the water storage tanks in the attic of the house, and the kitchen and bathroom faucets. They sent the samples to a laboratory as the health department awaited the laboratory results. As the health department awaited the laboratory results, the inspectors continued their investigation. Was it possible that a delivery man carried the bacterium on his boots? Had milk come from a contaminated dairy farm? Had the family eaten tainted fruit or vegetables? These were also likely suspects because the contaminated water might have been used to irrigate or wash the fruit and vegetables. But the inspectors ruled out these possibilities. Nearly every family in Oyster Bay purchased their milk and cream from the same dairies. No other family was struck. The inspectors ruled out raw fruit and vegetables too. No one had eaten these things at the time of the outbreak. Again, no other Oyster Bay family had fallen ill. If milk, fruit, or vegetables had caused the outbreak, the epidemic would be much greater. The laboratory results came back. Nothing. No harmful bacteria were found in the water, the privy, or the cesspool. Meanwhile, the New York Times reported that Mrs. Warren was better and that Miss Margaret Warren was getting on as well as she could be expected. This must have been a relief for the Thompsons and the health department officials. The investigation had been thorough. Since no other outbreaks had occurred at the time and no other outbreaks followed, health department officials determined that the outbreak was a mystery, and it would remain a mystery. The danger had passed. Case closed. Except it wasn't. Not for Mrs. Thompson. The Oyster Bay house had been a wedding present. She wanted the problem solved. Interesting. So, the owners apparently rented out their house to the Warren family. That's why they were there for the summer. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson had the health department come out and inspect stuff, and they tried to determine, what could be the cause of it, because they knew that this specific bacteria that caused typhoid fever would, could contaminate from human waste, I guess you could say. Number 1 and number 2. I think it's mainly number 2. But if that bacteria came in contact with the clean water supply, it could cause a spread of the disease. So that's what the health officials were trying to investigate and things like that. They didn't find anything. They determined that all of the water supplies and everything that they had at the household was fine. So the health department said, okay, we're done. Nothing else we can do. But it sounds like Miss Thompson, the owner of the house, might have a little bit more involvement and interest in what's going on and if this continues or not. But we will find out. Okay, bye.